Okay, let's do
It's
this.
kind of on you because you're asking questions.
That's true. Hey everybody, Kenny Hubbard here for the wife again, Razor Edge Productions. Gonna sit down with Gary Clark today. I'm very interested in what Gary has to say. Next year for Gary will be 30 years racing. Of course, growing up with, Mike Clark as your dad, Mr. Dirtworks, and I wanna hear from Gary what that was like. So, 6 months old was your first race.
Yeah, I was born in December, and that next summer was the first time I went to the racetrack. I grew up around it. That's pretty much all I ever knew growing up. That's how I learned my numbers. That's how I learned who people were. At a young age, I guess I knew people by their number before I knew their actual names. But it gets in your blood when you start that young, for sure. And it's hard to shake that loose whenever you get it in you.
So growing up, Dad's racing every weekend, all over the place, wasn't he?
He stuck mostly to Southwest Missouri stuff. He raced Nevada. He won a few championships there. He raced Bolivar, Monette. After I-44 over at Lebanon opened up, we went and raced there some. He had raced at one of the old original Joplin tracks that hasn't been there for years. I think, and there's more tracks I know that he raced at that I can't remember for sure, but just mostly he raced right around this area. So I mean, he raced with a lot of good racers too.
Yeah, from that day and age, there was a lot of good competition.
Yeah, I mean, he raced with guys like Ken Essery, Johnny Bone, Roger Chisholm, Larry Phillips. A lot of top quality racers. It was awesome to be able to grow up in that era watching those guys race too.
Right. So, at what point? So you're at the track every weekend with Dad. You're seeing all these different places. So it's a matter of time before I want to get in the car.
Well, that was kind of early on. That was definitely something that I thought about from a really young age. And then, of course, as I started getting older, I started kind of leaning towards that more and more, and talking to Dad about that. And he just kept telling me no. And so, I mean, it wasn't just I got to jump in because we owned the company deal. I had to pay to get going, and I mean, I started in a go-kart, which was a dumb idea because I'm a big guy, and I've always been a big guy, and big guy go-kart classes are few and far between. They're actually designed for big guys like me, but so we just I did that just a little bit, and Andy Claiborne worked here, and he knew Larry Rogers over at Fort Scott had a body shop, and Larry was racing mini stocks, and he knew that Larry had a Mercury Bobcat sitting over there, bright yellow car, and I'm pretty sure Andy had done a little bit of back work on this to figure it out, but he knew that Larry would sell me the car, so I sold the go-kart stuff, and I went and paid Larry for this car. I had to run it past my old man first, of course, and so we went over there. I just told this story to Chris while ago before he left, but we went to Larry's. I paid him for the car. He stripped all the glass out of it because he had the body shop. Drove the car down the back roads with no windshield in it at dark to Andy's house. So we worked on finishing stripping the guts out of the car. Once we got pretty much all that stuff stripped out, we brought it over here, and James Ramsey was our lead fabricator at the time, and James built the cage for me in that car, and we built quite a little race car.
And how old were you at this time?
I had graduated high school. That was 1994. Then in 1994, so I was 19. Actually, I was fixing to be 20. So I was 19 when I started building. I turned 20 that year.
And at this point in your life, Dad's building Dirtworks has started, right?
So Dirtworks started in Monette. Gary Bass and Evan Patton started the business, building cars in this area. The division, the modifieds, of course, started in Iowa with IMCA, and they saw the cars and decided that they needed to be in this area. Some guys did, and they brought the concept down here and started building cars, and Rex Merritt and Dale Roper were two of the first guys that they had driving for them. And so my dad raced until, I'm gonna screw this up. It was either 84 or 85 when he sold out. And you know, here I am, 10, 11 years old, and this is all I've ever known. And I was mad because my dad's selling all his racing stuff, and I'm thinking he's getting away from racing, and I love this, and you know, we're not going to do this anymore. Well, at that time, I didn't understand, I guess, kind of what was fixing to happen, and I don't think he did either. But he went to work for Gary. There used to be on this property. It's hard to believe right now because you saw the buildings are sitting here, but there used to be a salvage yard that sat here. The original building isn't here anymore. Actually, the two original buildings aren't here anymore. There was an old blacksmith shop, which was my dad's race shop, that kind of started the whole Dirtworks thing on this property. Well, all around out behind these buildings was open area, and my dad had a salvage yard. Well, he had a lot of the Chevelle frames and the different A-body cars that it took to build the modifieds on. So he was cutting the frames out, selling them to Gary to build cars on, and started selling a few cars for him. So, I mean, my dad was the one that first got modifieds in right around this area through the Dirtworks deal. And we started selling parts and running parts trucks to racetracks and stuff for him. So I still got to be at the racetrack and be involved, and I just in a different capacity than what I was.
And at this time, you're 13, 14 years old now?
I mean, probably. I mean, this all went on, like I said, he sold out when I was about 10 or 11, so 12, 13 years old is when this is all kind of starting to go on, and it progressed from there, and we started building the chassis here for Gary. He still owned the company down there in Monette, was where it started. We were building them up here for him. That's when James came to work for my dad. We've had some awesome people through here over the years as fabricators, as far as they go. I mean,
a lot of the guys that I know and respect in racing had something to do with Mike Clark.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys. I mean, a lot of chassis companies. Well, most of the chassis companies around this area that are still going. Either had some of our cars or worked for us. You know, Jerry from Hoffman's, he worked here. Scotty Allen worked here. Billy Portwood that has Portwood Fabrication, he worked here. You know, Andy, when he left here, they went and did the Evolution thing. I mean, he worked here for a lot of years. Monty Grice left here and went out to North Carolina, went to work for Chip Ganassi. I mean, we had some awesome people that came through here and worked here over the years.
So you had guys you're watching racing and admiring.
Yeah.
And so you're getting hungry to get in a car.
Oh, yeah.
Dad's building race cars.
Yeah, so it just seemed natural. I figured I should get a race car, and that wasn't how he saw it, which I'm glad he saw it that way. I'm glad that I didn't just... I see too many times today, and this might offend some people, but I see too many times today where kids just get handed stuff, and they don't appreciate what they've got, and they don't appreciate other people's stuff, and they just go out there and they wreak havoc a lot of the time because they don't have to pay for it. They don't have to fix it themselves. So where I started different was, you know, I paid for my car, so if it got tore up, I had to pay to get it fixed, and I had to fix it myself. I mean, I could get guys to help me that worked here, but I put a lot of effort into fixing it myself. So it wasn't just a hand me over deal to where I started off.
So how long did you run the mini stock?
Well, so I told you the progression from the go-kart to the mini stock. So that was in 94. 95, I tried to run the kart in Nevada. They didn't like the kart in Nevada because we had built a race car. And at that time, the road warrior class in Nevada was not a race car class, I guess you could say. I mean, it was, but it wasn't. I hadn't turned the lap in the car, and they wouldn't let me race it there. So I had to go to Humboldt. I raced the car a couple of times at North Fork. Actually, I got my first feature win in that car at North Fork. There's like 3 of us down there, and Mark Knight used to race mini stocks, and that dude was fast. And I was chasing him, and he was pulling away, and he run wide open off into turn 1, ran off into the racetrack. And I felt bad for him, but at the same time, it worked out for me because I ended up picking my first feature win in that car.
And we count those in racing, folks.
Yeah, oh yeah,
You-
yeah. If I'd have won something in the go-kart, I'd have counted that, but I didn't, so.
When luck and opportunity
Yeah.
strike, you better
Yeah,
have your nuts and
absolutely.
bolts tight.
Absolutely. So anyway, like I said, 95, I started racing Humboldt, racing over there about every week. I was to a point where we were a consistent top 5 car every night. But I knew in order to get any further forward, I was going to have to spend a lot of money on a car that's generally what I spend a whole lot of money on. So I don't know. It was getting a little bit frustrating, I guess. I mean, I was having fun. You know, racing, this is going to sound terrible when I say this, racing used to be a lot of fun. It's still fun, but it used to be a whole lot of fun. And I'll get around to talking about that again here in a little bit. But anyway, we had an old chassis sitting out back that we had traded for. A guy traded in to get a new one. There wasn't anything wrong with it. Now, I say that. The car sat out back here over the winter, and a lot of times if you leave a car outside with tubing and stuff, you can get moisture inside the tubing. Well, the rear frame rails, we used to build cars that had square tube rear frame rails on them, and this car had those. Well, it had moisture inside the frame rails that winter, and they swelled up and broke. So that was the only thing that was wrong with this car. It was sitting out there, so we brought it in the shop. The building used to sit here where we're at today. Was my grandpa's automotive shop. He used to have a mechanic shop here. Well, at that time when I'd started racing, it became my race shop. So I brought that thing in and stripped all the sheet metal and stuff that was left on it off of it. Started cutting all the bad bars out of it that needed to be replaced. Andy Claiborne has been an integral part of me getting behind the wheel from day one, except for the go-kart thing. I think probably if him and I would have talked about it a little bit more before then, I probably would have skipped the go-kart phase because it just, I mean, other than just getting laps and seat time, that was really kind of just a waste for me. But I mean, he was very integral in getting the 4-cylinder going, and he was very integral in getting the modified going because he's the one that started talking to me about that car sitting out there. So got it in here, strip all the stuff off of it, cleaned it up. The guys in the shop put the new tail set for me. We got it repainted. Andy sheet metaled it for me. We had a bunch of used parts around, so I started bolting it together with used parts. And my dad used to wheel and deal with guys when we built cars. I mean, we had guys that had engine shops that bought cars from us, and we had guys that had different kinds of race shops, parts and stuff. So we had all kinds of stuff around here. Well, we had some motors sitting here, and God love him, he picked the smallest motor that we had. They used to have
Your dad now.
my dad, yeah. They used to have a cubic inch rule out in Wichita in the late model class. It was so many pounds per cubic inch. So the smaller motor you ran, the lighter your car could be. Well, we had bought, or we didn't bought, we had traded for one of these motors from guys out at KBS in Wichita, Kansas. And I can't remember, I think it was 302 or 305. It was little. It was a little bitty cubic inch motor. So we put that in this car. Now, when I started racing, I kind of already had a bad taste in my mouth from what had happened the first night I went to Nevada. Plus, a little lack of experience. I wasn't really excited about being on a bull ring where it was real tight and close quartered and stuff. And at that time, North Fork Speedway was open and Joplin 66 was going real big. So that's the first 2 tracks I started cutting my teeth on in a modified. So took the car down there, ran a few races. I think in 95 I had ran 3 races, maybe 4. And IMCA Super Nationals were coming up. Because like I said, I'd ran the mini stock most of the season. It's the end of the season, we get this modified put together. And Andy says, why don't we take this thing to Super Nationals? IMCA Super Nationals, Boone, Iowa. And I said, are you crazy?
Biggest race in the country.
Yeah, oh yeah. Biggest race, lots of cars, lots of drivers. And Andy said, you're only going to be as good as the guys you race with. He said, just think about this. He said, you're going to be there anyway. Because we did. We went up there for work. I mean, a lot of guys went and raced. And at that time, I was just going to help them guys in the pits or help with selling cars or help with the other guys that had cars and stuff.
So you were working for Dad?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So I actually started working here basically whenever, probably 12, 13, 14 years old, sweeping floors and packing parts for shipping UPS because we were selling parts out of here. So I worked here for over 20 years basically. So anyhow, he says this to me and I don't know. I said, I don't think Dad's ever going to go for that. So he went in and he talked to my dad. Well, next thing I know, we're headed to Boone. And get up there, and we get this little bitty motor in there, whole new racetrack, lots of cars, lots and lots of cars. Got a lot of track time between running the heat race and the last chance races and stuff. Didn't even come close to making an A main that year, which was fine. I mean, I didn't expect to. I mean, luck plays a part in that a lot of times. So, I mean, there was always a possibility, I suppose, that it could have happened, but I never really figured it would.
I mean, to get to a main at Boone, you're talking
Oh,
about
it's-
being out there with, I don't know if they did the 3 wide thing
Oh yeah,
then, but
they've always started them 3 wide. Back then, when I first started going, was at the bottom end of their car counts. The last time that I was there, was in 2005, I think, maybe 2006, somewhere around that era. Anyway, no, it was 2007 was the last time I was up there. Anyway, they they had 40 heats, so it was split into 2 sections. They'd run 20 heats, run a qualifier, run a last chance race, or run the B features that they're in. Then they'd run another 20 heats and do the same thing all over again. So it was crazy. I mean, we were getting 400 plus cars. Well, now I think this year the modified car count was up there quite a bit again. So I mean, it's crazy to think that you're racing with between 200 and 500 cars a year up there. So anyway, we came home from there and went back racing where I was at. And that first night, I mean, I was doing everything I could, and I was just way under horsepower. But I got done, and my dad said, "You're a lot faster than you were." I said, "Okay," because I couldn't tell at that point in time. I mean, I could tell what the car was doing and stuff, but I mean, I didn't know that I was that much faster. I didn't realize that I changed it that much. And he said, "We need to get you something a little bit better next year." So the next year we upgraded. We sold that car and built a new car and upgraded motors.
So now Dad's building you a car to race.
Right. I mean, I still had the initial investment.
You're doing it. 'Cause
Yeah.
He's made sure of that
Yeah.
along the way. Here
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can have this whole car out back, and here's this little motor. I got nothing else I can
Yep.
do with. Here you go. So now you're getting a car.
Yeah.
You're getting a motor.
Yep. And we started a little bit that year traveling around a few tracks. And it went back to what Andy said about you're only as good as the people you race with. If you race with the same 20 people every night, you're only going to be as good as the best guy you're racing with. And if you travel, which we did a lot after the first couple of years, after I got some seat time and stuff and got more comfortable, we traveled quite a bit. A lot of the bigger shows. I mean, I didn't run a full season of USMTS stuff or anything like that, but I mean, we went to a lot of the bigger paying shows. We used to run down into Texas a lot, and we go to Batesville and West Plains. 1998 was the first year we took off and went to Florida for Speed Weeks. That was an experience, going to UMP land. So I would get to run with different people all the time, and I would get to see what other people were doing and learn things from other people. And not that I didn't have a lot of good teachers here. I mean, we had some, I named off those guys that built chassis. I mean, Rex Merritt worked here, Scott Drake worked here, Steve Crane from down in Texas came up and worked here for a while, Scott Stiskel from up in Nebraska worked here. I mean, there's such a long list of awesome racers and awesome guys that worked here in this shop for a period of time. I mean, Chris Diamond was one of my last employees here, and he's the one that actually is renting the shop from me right now and kind of helped get me back into a race car again. I mean, he did actually help quite a bit. James Barker owns the car that I'm driving right now, and Chris kind of helped set that deal up. But you know, so there's just Steve Arduzer is another one. The year my dad died, he died in 2009, and I wasn't sure what it looked like after that. I ran one more race that year. They had a race scheduled at Nevada, and I was supposed to go run it. Well, I got married on October 3rd of 2009, and on October 9th of 2009, my dad died, so 6 days later. And I mean, it just turned my world upside down. So there was one more race left in Nevada. There's a crazy story that goes with this. I know you did Shanna did the interview with Andy, and Andy talked about a lot of the people that we had involvement with over the years through here, and Ken Schrader was one of them, and seeing Kenny still this weekend down at Springfield. I don't want to dare say how old Kenny is. I know he's kind of a little bit older guy, but to see him out there still getting it like he was, you know, in A-Mod and B-Mod both last night was pretty awesome. And Kenny Wallace, and we, so Carl Edwards, before he ever got to NASCAR, he had a modified. He had an old Dirtworks car, and you know, I know surely you've seen the pictures and heard the stories about the business cards that Carl used to hand out. If you're looking for a driver, you're looking for me. And we had a stack of those because he'd come to Sedalia about every week when we'd go up there, and he'd always bring one of those to us, to my dad. Anyway, he bought an old DW7 himself, and he converted. He did the things to it that he needed to get himself fast in it, and he won some races in it. Well, that year he was running up front a lot. He was driving a 99 car for Roush, and I can't remember. I think they were at I think they were in Atlanta that weekend, and he blew the motor, and he did a shout out to me after he blew the motor, because they were talking to him, and he made the comment. He said, "Hey, just want to give a shout out. You know, hope my night was going better." And of course, we ended up getting rained out because I was in a movie theater, and my phone started going crazy in the movie theater. I had about 20 people text me, "Did you just see that? I can't believe that." But the relationship that my dad had with a lot of these guys, you know, a couple years ago, Schrader just texted me out of the blue and said, "Hey man, thinking about you. You know, I miss your dad and appreciate everything you guys ever did for us and stuff." And I'll get that from guys every once in a while, not just guys like that, but I mean even some of these other guys I mentioned. And I'll get messages on Facebook or text message here and there, same kind of stuff. But
And these are guys that you can't tell the story of racing in this area
yeah,
without talking about these
Right.
guys, and not just your dad. Guys that come through this shop, guys that worked here, guys that raced their cars, guys that, I mean, cars touring on the national USMTS
Yeah.
back then, you know, this huge deal, these guys, and the amount of people Dirtworks touched, and your dad, and that's awesome. It's awesome.
But anyway, I mean, so like I said, I mean, I got to race with some awesome people, and I learned from some of the best. And traveling and racing some of the races that we did, you know, I've had the opportunity. I've been very blessed and fortunate to have won some of the races that I did. Some bigger races. You know, we won a big race down at Muskogee, Thunderbird Speedway. I think it's going back by Thunderbird now. At that time, it was just Muskogee Speedway, but they had a big spring race called the Azalea Day Nationals. We won that one year. Got to win the Jayhawk Nationals one year. My favorite win, coolest win, was when I won the Harris Clash at Knoxville. You know, that with the IMCA show, and
That's a big deal. How many cars entered in that?
there was, I think that year was, the Harris Clash, of course, isn't as big as the Super Nationals, but there was still 150 plus cars at that deal. And man, we just rolled in there that year, and that season was just one of my better seasons. We had a good season that year, about 20 feature wins that year, and just everything was clicking. Didn't matter where we went, the car, I had found things that worked for me with the car that were great. Didn't matter where we went. had learned some things. I had just figured out better ways to drive. And something that I tell this story to people, and they look at me like I'm crazy. But at that time was about the time that a lot of the NASCAR guys started talking about the virtual racing, where before they would go to a racetrack, they would get on the computer and they would run laps at that track. Well, one of the computer games that was out at the time was World Outlaws game, and it had sprint cars and it had big block modifieds instead. It didn't have regular modifieds. It had late models and stuff on it. One of the tracks was Knoxville. Leading up to Knoxville, I spent the 2 weeks before that, and I ran race after race after race on that computer game, seeing what the track would do through the situation, through the scenario and stuff. And it's one of those deals. I thought, well, what have I got to lose? We'll give it a shot and see if this helps or not. And man, I'm telling you, we went out there and just everything was perfect. The track did what the track was doing on the game, and the car was perfect for what the track did. And I hit my marks, and Scott Drake was up there watching. He was sitting in the stands, and he come down after the races, and he said, "I guarantee you I watched your old man smoke a whole pack of Winstons during that race." So my dad smoked, and it, he loved watching me race, but it made him nervous to watch me race too, because especially when a deal like that where we were out there and running good and had a chance to really do something big in this race.
I bet he was a proud papa.
Oh yeah. One of the pictures I sent, or a couple of pictures I sent Shano for the promo video were from there. One was mom and dad with me in Victory Lane, and the other one was me just being in the car in Victory Lane with the trophy. And, that is such a cool track to race on. To know the history of that place, all the cool drivers that have raced there. I mean, everybody that's Indy car and sprint car for years went through there and raced there. And you go through the museum and see the old cars and see the awards and the names and stuff, and you can just feel the history when you're there. And it's just, that was, they have the suites in the top of the museum and stuff, and as you're doing the parade lap before the races up there, even with the modifieds, then people in those suites are up there and they're flipping the light switches on and off as you're going around, and it is such a cool ambiance to be part of.
To be on that track and to have a feature win.
Oh yeah.
At Knoxville.
Yeah.
How cool. Yeah. That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, what year is that?
That was put me on the spot. That was 2004. 2003 I won the Jayhawk Nationals at Lakeside, and then 2004 I won that race. And it was funny because a buddy of mine from Nebraska had won the Jayhawk the year before I did, and then he'd won the Harris Clash the year before I did. So I said, all right, you just need to go win the Super Nationals then this coming year, and then I can do it next year. But that didn't happen for either one of us.
Didn't get it done.
Didn't happen. So
didn't get it done. Yeah. There's I like the outlook of go do it, go run with them guys, and get yourself faster. And then you come to a win like Knoxville. That's got to be your favorite win.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's been some cool wins. I mean, there's been some things that have happened along the way that hold a little bit more special place for me. Robbie Music used to order all my cars, and he used to put on a race up at Adrian. They used to have a race in Des Moines that we went to every year before the Sunday before the Super Nationals, called the Driver's Dream Race. And Robbie had this idea that he wanted to put on basically like a Driver's Dream Race and do it as an invitational. And he invited all of his customers. And so, I mean, there was guys from all over the place showed up to run that race at Adrian, of all places. And you may have been working there at the time.
Oh
yeah. So that race happened 3 years in a row, and Jerry Tarwater won it the first year, and I won it the next two. And those were cool wins for me, because Robbie and I were very close personal friends. I mean, Robbie has done a lot for me, not just in my racing, but in my personal life as well. And
meant something to you.
Oh yeah, it did.
Because you don't get into racing for money.
No.
Not guys like us. Even Gary, even coming through Dirt Works, you didn't get into racing for money.
No.
And that's not
the racing aspect of it was, I mean, by the time that we were doing the things like I'm talking about now, that was business write-off stuff. By that point in time, I wasn't making money doing it.
Right.
I was making money by being able to go out there and do good and put on a show and
In your
and
car,
entice-
your
yeah,
building, to
yeah.
show your customer, this is
Exactly.
what we can do.
Exactly.
This is what you can do. If you can put it in the corner like that guy puts it in the corner. So 2010, 2009,
2009, my dad died.
2010, you lose your dad.
Yeah.
So you raced that final race at Nevada.
I did. I led most of that race, and I tell you, if you talk to Brian Bowen today, he'll tell you that I should have won the race. I led a lot of that race, and we had a caution, and Brian got put in front of me on the caution, and he got next to me under the caution, shaking his head that he should be behind me, and looking at me and pointing, and I just went and I waved him on because they were telling us he had to go up there, and I mean, you know how the way it can get. It was just, I mean, I did all I could do to try to get back around him. But the cool thing for me about that day, I mean, I wanted to win that race just because. I'm starting to get a little emotional talking about it, but
That's all right.
but the other thing about that is, growing up, my dad and his dad raced side by side in Nevada a lot. You know, Ron Boland. My dad won a handful of championships in Nevada. Ron Boland won a lot of championships in Nevada.
Yeah.
And so I got out of the car. I pulled up beside Brian. I got out of the car and I walked over to him. And I said, if I wasn't going to win this race, you needed to, for that reason. And it was just it was a cool moment to be able to share that.
That's awesome. I'm passionate enough about racing.
Yeah.
Stories like that tear me up. And then
And another race that I won that was kind of an emotional deal. The Tony Roper Memorial used to be at Monette, and I never ran any good at Monette. I'd run okay, but never really all that great. And it's crazy because I'd run decent at Wheatland, and I'd run decent up at the LA Raceway there at Lamont. And the tracks really aren't a ton different as far as the shape and size, but they were just enough different that I couldn't get a handle on Monette. And we went down there one year for the Tony Roper Memorial and started on the second row and ended up winning that race. And I battled Rex Merritt for the win. And Tony was one of those guys. It was cool because he was in the dirt work stuff when he raced locally. He raced some dirt. He raced asphalt cars for us. And then, of course, he went on the truck and at that time the Busch Grand National cars. And then he had that truck wreck, and it took his life. And so Tony was one of those guys, and honestly, all the guys that I ever was around through this were great people. But Tony's one of those guys, even at a young age, that he was just always kind to me and always, always inquisitive about what was going on in my life and stuff. And I was still pretty young at that time, and it was the same kind of deal. I got out of the car after that deal, and Rex was down there in Victory Lane with me, and we hugged each other, and I told him, I said, it had to be one of us to win this race, you know. So there's been all kinds of cool little things like that, but
and some of those stick more than the big shows.
Yeah.
That, you know, even if there was only 10 cars there, if it's for this purpose, it puts a whole different feel for it.
So anyway, back after 2009, my dad had been sick for a few years. I mean, he'd had different things, situations. He'd had a knee surgery, which shouldn't have been a big deal, but he made it a big deal. He'd had a brain tumor, and I don't know that a lot of people had even known that for sure outside of just closer friends and family, which was a kind of a scary time.
Right.
And in fact, I actually during that time, my cars have always been blue and yellow with a lot of yellow on them, and those were two colors that were my dad's favorite colors. Well, he was sick at that time. I undid everything I did and just had a solid blue car like my dad used to have with yellow numbers on it, and just kind of a tribute for him. Even had his number style on the car. But he thought that was kind of cool, but he said, you need to go back to your colors. So, but anyway, so 2010, that winter, I didn't know. I mean, like I said, my world turned upside down because we worked in this building together. I mean, my office was right over there through that door. and there's another door right past that was his office, and my desk sat right outside his office door. So to be in this building without him, to go to a racetrack without him, to do a lot of things without him was just going to be so foreign to me that it was, I don't know, I couldn't wrap my head around what it was going to be like.
So and not just the racing aspect, but the running the business.
Oh yeah, so I should have, in hindsight, I should have taken a month at least to just process.
To just figure it out.
That morning after I went to the hospital, I came back in this building and sat down at my desk after I talked to the guys that worked here and started making phone calls. Some of the hardest phone calls I've ever made.
Right.
So anyway, I didn't know. I didn't want to not race because it was in my blood, but at the same time, I'm like, this is not going to be,
So what pushed you through that door? Because you picked up racing again.
So
you kept the business going.
So I did keep the business going for a period of time. Not, like I said, had I took time, and I should have taken time and asked for help is what I should have done. But I'm too stubborn and hard-headed, and I just finally ended up, I don't remember exactly when, but I finally just ended up walking away and said I can't do it anymore. But so that next year, Steve Arduza worked for me, and I watched him do this. Steve lived across the street from me at the time, and there was an old wooden deck on the back of his house. And Johnny Waugh, I'm sure you know Johnny, local hero around here, local legend as far as building street stocks and stock cars and stuff. But him and Steve had 4 jack stands out there on his wooden deck, and they took an old G-body frame out there, and they had a cage out of a DW8, and they leveled all this stuff up on his wooden deck, keep in mind, and they built this car. And I watched them doing it, and I'm thinking, man, they're going to burn the freaking house down, because it's, like I said, it's an old wooden deck.
And they're cutting, grinding, welding.
Yeah, I'm thinking, man, I like Steve. And Steve and I are actually cousins, but
I'll bet they had a blanket close, a welding blanket.
I don't know, but I just kept thinking, man, I don't want to see that place go up in flames. But so anyway, they got that car built and hung the body on it. I mean, it was a cool looking car. And I when I was looking for pictures, I told Shannon there's a car that I wanted to find some pictures of, and I could not find it.
And this is a street stock.
It is a street stock. It's a full body car. I'd never driven a full body car at this point in my life, except for the Pinto or the Bobcat. And I mean, when I was little, my dad raced late models. So when I was a little kid, late models is where I decided that's where it was at for me. I wanted to be in a late model. The year that I decided that I didn't want to do late model anymore, we had went. This was before I actually started racing. I think it was maybe the year before I started in a modified. We went to Muskogee. The fall race I can't remember what it was called. I can't remember now what they called their fall race. They'd had the spring one that I told you that I won, and they'd have the race in the fall also. And we went down there and watched it, and at that time, it was kind of what was the predecessor series to what's now the Lucas Oil cars. It was the Habitampa Dirt late models. They're traveling across the country, late models. I mean, it's Bloomquist and Moyer and all those guys, like what it is still today. And,
right.
Well, I say still today. I mean, there's a bunch of young kids now, but
yeah,
those guys still do some and still pretty fast. But anyway, they had a 40-lap modified feature, and the modifieds got there on that track and ran 3-4 wide all the way top to bottom around this track. It was black, it was slick, it was smooth, which is what racetracks should be. I'm just throwing that out there because that's the way I feel like racetracks should be. I said I grew up in North Fork and Joplin racing. That's where I started learning to race. And those tracks, almost barring huge rain events, that's how those tracks were every week. But anyway, that's how Muskogee was. It was that way all the way across the racetrack. And there was guys running up against the wall, down around the tires, a couple of grooves through the middle. Awesome race. Good race. They go out there with the late models. They do their parade lap. They get lined up, they come around, they take the green flag, and it's like the inside row separated so the outside row could fall in line. And for 100 laps, they ran a single file around the bottom, 100 laps, nose to tail. Nobody passing anybody. And I looked at my dad and said, I don't want to raise a late on lever if that's how it's going to be.
Right.
So like I said, modifieds, I mean, that's what we built. That's what I learned to love. I mean, that's what I learned the most about, obviously. I mean, of course, there's a lot of things from that can transfer over to the stock car stuff, because the modifieds still, even today, have the stock front clip on them and everything.
Right. Right.
But, you know, there's really not anything you can do to the back of the car. It's all stock suspension. And at that time, of course, now we got the POWRi Super Stocks, but at that time it was just it was regular local street stock class. So anyway, we built this car, or they built this car. Well, Steve didn't have a motor. He was going to build a motor, but he didn't have one. And he said, why don't you drive my car? Because he asked me about racing, and I'm like, I don't know. I want to, but I don't think I can do it by myself. I said, it's just not going to be right. He said, why don't we go racing together? And he said, you got a motor and transmission, let's put it in the car and let's go racing. So we did. Got that car ready, and they had I don't know if Steve will watch this or somebody will correct me later, but I think it was a Buick Regal body that was on it, and they had I mean, it looked nice the way that it done it. I mean, it looked like a stock car, you know, a little spoiler on the back and stuff, and raced it 6 times, won 3 races with it. I should have won 4 or 5 of them, but just stupid little things happened.
So you're questioning racing.
Yeah.
You get a motor stabbed in the street stock, and first night out.
Yeah, right off the bat, we're running up front. So
here's your push.
So we raced that car 6 times, won 3 races. There was a guy that wanted to buy it. I mean, they I don't know, after about the 2nd or 3rd night they watched this race, they were at the racetrack about every night that we were racing watching us. And they came with a handful of money and wanted to buy it. And Steve's like, what do you think? And I said, so if you want to sell it, sell it. I said, it's fine. He's like, well, I want to build another one. And I said, well, we got a cage sitting there at the shop we can cut out of the car. I said, we can build another one.
So you're back in.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, you jump out and you win some races. That's a great shove back into to confirming what you need to be doing in racing.
Right. So anyway, we did that. Sold that car. Brought another frame in here. Cut the cage out of an old DW11 that was sitting out here, so I had a little bit more room to get in and out of the car and stuff. But put it together. Ran it 6 times. Won 3 of those races. And honestly, I should have probably won all 6 of those. We got wrecked one night in that one, running I think 2nd. I was passing for the lead at South Coffeyville Speedway one night. It was like I think that was actually the first night we ran the car, and the thing just shut off going down the front stretch. I could not figure out why. So we got back to the shop, got to tearing into it. It would fire up and run for a minute, and it would just shut off. Tore the fuel filter apart, and I don't know, because it was all brand new stuff. Because when we sold that car, I mean, Steve got decent money out of it, and we just put it back in to build another car.
Right.
So it was all brand new parts we put on this thing when we built it. And so I don't know if when they put the fuel cell together, there was a rag left in, like a paper towel or something left in the fuel cell, or what it was, but I pulled the fuel filter apart and had one of those metal filters in it, and the outside was just coated in some kind of fibers, and it sucked it shut, and that's why the car quit running. And once we fixed that, then it was game on. But so like I said, we won 3 in that car. Should have won all of them. The last race that I ran in that car was at South Coffeyville, made up for the one that we lost. And actually, the cool thing about that race was it was a year to the day that my dad had died. So that's another one of those races for me that was really meant a lot to me.
Made your foot heavy, didn't it?
It did.
Old brain made that.
Yeah.
It makes that leg stiff.
On the way to the track, I told Steve, I said, I said, I'm going to win tonight. He said, don't get too cocky. And I said, I'm not getting cocky. I said, I said, let me say to Derwin, I have to win tonight. And I said, it's been a year. And he just looked at me and grinned. Steve gets this grin on his face sometimes when you say stuff to him that he just knew, and he just grinned at me, and we did, and that. So Steve owned both of those cars, and every race that we won except for that one, he got to keep the trophy. And I said, "You don't get this trophy. This one's mine." So then the next year, we sold that car at the end of the year, and I've been trying hardcore to get that car bought back. I know where it's at. I know the guy that's got it.
This street stock.
Yeah, I've been sending him messages trying to get him to say he'll sell it. Yeah, so if you're listening to this, we're still interested. But anyway, so my dad had built a car for himself, a modified, probably 2000, 2001. He raced it once or twice and decided that he'd been out of it long enough and was old enough at that time that his reflexes were slow enough and he just couldn't do it anymore. And he said the cars don't react the same way, and which they didn't. I mean, there was a lot of advancements between the time my dad quit and what these modifieds were at the time.
Yeah, racing has taken just leaps and bounds at this time. I mean,
the last car that he had was an old Fifth Design Howe car. It was a 2-link car, kind of like what we run today, but I mean, there was nothing as far as bar angles and stuff like what we do today, and springs and stuff. I mean, those cars still weighed a lot. And anyway, he just wanted to do it because he'd never been in one, and he wanted to know what it felt like to drive what he was building. So it was cool. I mean, everybody that worked here went that night, didn't race. We all went to help him and work on the car and stuff. And I don't want to tell you, that thing, when he built it, my dad was something. That was probably the most cheated up race car that ever came out of this place as far as the way that we built it. If you could do it, he did it. And the funny thing was, at that time, the head IMCA inspector was here one time because we were big IMCA sponsors, and they would come down here once in a while. They were on their way somewhere, and they stopped by here. And we had him look at this car. And there were a few things that he picked up on and saw right away, and there were a few things that he didn't see at all. And we're like, you're missing a lot of stuff. And he'd look a little bit more, and he couldn't find something. Finally, we started telling him all the stuff that was wrong with it. And his name was Bob Ross, and he was a redheaded guy. And when he would get mad, not the painter Bob Ross, that dude was happy-go-lucky. Bob Ross, the tech man, was not. When he would get mad, his face would turn about as red as that phone case over there. And when we started telling him all the stuff he wasn't seeing, he was mad. And so anyway, that car, we stripped it down. Some of the parts we had to just get rid of because some of the things my dad had done were dumb, but and the parts that we could, we used over on some other things. Actually, that car raced a few more times. Larry McDaniels from Wichita that used to race late models, he drove that car a few times and won some races with it. I think that car probably had maybe 8 races on it total, and it just set. We built a stand for it, and we put it up on top of that stand. It was sitting in the shop just over there out of the way, doing its own thing, just collecting dust. So Jim Buzzard had the shop behind us back here, and Jim asked me, so this would have been 2011, I guess, or so, and he asked me what I was going to do for racing, and I'm like, I don't know. So we ended up putting that car together, and in amongst this time, Mark Seltzer's let me drive some of his stuff, and I drove another street stock for him. I drove his late model a couple of times. Not the greatest experience of my life, but at least I can say I got to drive a late model.
You got to do it.
Yeah. But so anyway, Mark's car, we had a lot of success with the street stock too. And I did that off and on for a while because I did that when I was still here, and then when I worked for Phoenix over in Nevada, when that chassis company started with David and Scotty Boo, I drove it then some. But anyway, so I put this old DW8 together that we built for my dad. We brought it in here, and all the cheater stuff that was left on it, we had to put a brand new stub on it because, anyway. It was a cheated up race car. We'll just go with that. But, so anyway, brought it in here, put a new stub on it, got it ready, put a new front end on it. At that time, we were building the Genesis cars in here, and the front ends were a lot better than what the old DW8 stuff was. And, so we went ahead and put that on that car. And Jim's like, if you'll put that car together, which I mean, I had enough parts laying over, I could put it together. I bought a bunch of brand new stuff. He said, I got enough parts laying here, I'll build you a motor. He said, let's just go out race and have some fun. And so he put me a motor together, and I put that car together. We put it all out there on the track, and there's another one of those years, I think I won 5 or 6 races in that car, raced it a dozen or so times, and just had a blast doing that. That's when the B-mods were really kind of getting rolling around here. They'd already been doing them over at Wheatland and in Dallas County and stuff, but they were finally kind of getting going over here a little more, and just had a lot of fun. Jim would go to races with us. He pulled me to races a few times, and he was just enjoying going and hanging out with us at the track too. So got to the end of that year, sold it, and had a little hiatus as far as driving, I guess. I say that. I went to work for David and Scotty and got to race a car. Bob Curbs Bob Curbs, our tech man, bought that car that I had, and I got to drive that car for Bob for a little while. And when I went to work for David and Scotty, we built a new car and put all the parts off of it on there. So I was racing the Phoenix car then, of course. And so I got to run one of those cars for a season or two. And during that period of time working for them, I got back in an A-mod for a couple of races, which I think I could still do it if I wanted to, but I don't know. That doesn't intrigue me right now. I'm getting older, and I'm not that I'm necessarily getting slower, but there's things that I don't like doing anymore. And working on one as hard as you have to, an A-mod.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what it's like, Midwest mod, B-mod type stuff. As hard as you got to work on those, just kind of multiply that by a few, and that's what it's like working on A-mod. But so anyway, I did that, and it was about 6 months I worked for Hoffman in there before I went to work for Phoenix. And then Gary Hubert called me up one day. He used to work for Lucas over there at the ranch, and he had a fab shop over there. Wanted me to come work in a fab shop over there. So I got to work over there at Lucas Ranch for about a year and a half, and got to drive for Gary. He had a B-mod that I drove some, and then he bought a brand new lethal car for me to drive for A-mod. I got to run a handful of times. He bought that car, and he bought a Victory Circle modified out of California that his boy Evan drove. And so we both got to race together a few times driving for Gary. And then I came back over here, and basically what happened was they ran out of work for me over there in the shop, and I was like the last one hired, so I got to be the first one to go to.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I never had any hard feelings about it. I mean, it was rough, but
Just a little man on the totem pole.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Oh,
how
yeah.
it is. I mean, it ain't.
yeah. So I came back over here and started driving a school bus. In 100 years, yeah, I see your face over there, Shannon. In 100 years, you could have never told me that I would do that. Now I'll give you a little bit of backstory on this. My grandpa drove a school bus, and my dad drove a school bus. I never pictured that I'd be doing any kind of driving a school bus. But I that morning after I came home from over there at the ranch, I stopped, and at my church and was talking to my pastor, and he's like, I got something, maybe this will help you out. And he hands me this flyer, and I looked at it, and I looked at him and said, are you serious right now? And he said, you never know. And by that point in time, I mean, I had a lot of things had changed in my life. I mean, I was, for a lot of years, go, race. I mean, we would start in January, and the longest season that I ran, I think, was 2004. And we started like the third or fourth week in January, and raced in Georgia, and then went to Florida for over a week's worth of races for speed weeks. Came home, turned right around, started racing back in March down at Batesville and West Plains for their early year specials, and the last race we ran was the first part of December in McAllen, Texas that year at Rio Grande Speedway. They used to have a big race at the end of the year down there every year. We went down there for a week basically because it was supposed to be like a 3-day race. We ended up doing it in like 2 days because it rained. It rained almost all week, and I was doing double duty. Dealer of ours down in Texas, Russell Moore, had the Southern Sport Mods, what they're called now. At that point in time, they were just called limited mods, and they're basically what the street stocks are that we have here. You know, the stock metric frames with a stock rear suspension, stock front suspension, stock rear ends. You can't put a floater in them, which I always thought was the dumbest rule. But the cars are very competitive. It's a level playing field, or it used to always be anyway. So anyhow, I was doing double duty. I was running both cars that weekend, and I've never sat in one of those. So I'm out there running my heat race in that thing, and we finally got to qualify. And I'm running second. The track's kind of hooked up, and I'm following this guy, and I can't get under him, can't get under him. So finally, I rolled off in turn 3 and never lifted. And Robbie Starnes is another kind of big name racer from the Houston area. He was standing there by Russell when I did it. He looked at Russell and said, "I don't think you lifted." Russell said, "No, he didn't." And I think it kind of scared them both a little bit. But I just rolled in there and passed that dude on the outside and drove off in that heat race. Got qualified for that, and then ended up running A main in both cars and got top 10 finishes out of both cars. But I raced between 80 and 90 times that year. From the time we started in January to the time I finished in December.
That's a lot of racing.
Yeah.
That's a lot of racing.
So anyway, like I said, my life has later on here has changed a lot from what it was. You know, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, you're settling several years into a marriage.
Yeah, my kids are growing up. I'm leading youth at church and stuff, and so my priorities had swayed.
Stuff's a little slower.
Yeah. So
the old race car drivers got to pump the brakes a little bit.
Yeah. Not that it's not still there, because it is, but it's got to be done a little different. So anyway, like I said, when I did that stuff with Gary and came over here, started on a school bus. Andy had a couple of cars. He had a Harris car that he had been racing a little bit, and he had bought somebody out that had an old Skyrocket car, and actually it's one of the cars that Dustin Dennison has, or had. And there was another, I think it was an old Victory chassis from up in Iowa. Anyway, he bought somebody out, had all that stuff, and he's talking to me. He said, "Why don't we put this Skyrocket together and you race it a little bit?" So it's like, okay. I said, "Sure." He said, "Yeah, come on, let's do it." So went over there and worked on that thing, got it put together, and only got to race it a couple times. And about the second night we were out with it, I got hit in the left rear and it tore up the hub on it. Well, it took us probably a month and a half to find the hub for it, because the rear end that was in it was not like anything that we'd ever dealt with. And finally, I made enough phone calls. I finally got hold of Kelly and asked him what he had put in there. Well, he told me what it was, and so we finally had to call Harris and order the hub for it and got it put back together. And I think I ran it one more time after that. And but in the meantime, there was a race coming up in Nevada, and Andy said, "Why don't you just drive my car for that?" So I ended up driving his car, the Harris car, a couple of times, and then I ended up buying it from him that next year. And I was pretty excited. I'm gonna get back into racing again, and gonna be doing this again. And, got the car over here and stripped it down, and got with Midwest Sheet Metal. I got some new sheet metal for it, and skinned the whole thing, deck and body and everything. And had Billy at H3 lettered up for me, and it looked like kind of a throwback on one of my old cars, as far as the blue and yellow and the way it looked and stuff. And anyhow. Went to the racetrack first night in Nevada. I questioned why it was that I went there, because I went to the drivers meeting, and the guy that had the track at the time was, I don't know what happened the week before, but there was all kinds of talk about all kinds of stuff that could be done with that racetrack besides it being a racetrack. And I don't need you guys. Anyway, I looked at somebody and said, I don't really even know why I came tonight. But we ran top 3 or 4 that night. So that was pretty cool. You know, having not really raced a lot in that time span still, from basically 2011, 12 range to then. Actually, I raced the most at the end when I was with Phoenix. So they're, 2013, 2014 stuff. But so anyhow, we ran there that night. I went to Dallas County with it one night, a week or so later, because it's one of those deals. I didn't want to just race every week, and I don't know. We'll talk about that in a minute too. But I just wanted to be able to race a car and go out and have fun. And I went to Nevada the first night by myself, so that's never fun. So then I went to Dallas County. A buddy of mine went with me to Dallas County and ran second most of the race. We had caution with about 2 laps to go, and the tires sealed up. I ended up finishing like 3rd or 4th over there. I was mad. I was mad. Robbie Ewing had checked out. He was gone, leading the race. And JC Newell was running behind me, and I knew he was running right there behind me. And I was holding him off, and I thought, man, this is cool. I was having fun. And I always liked racing Dallas County. Bill and Scotty were always good to race for over there. So anyway, I ended up finishing, like I said, 3rd or 4th. It was over there too. I had fun. Well, then I came back another couple weeks or so later to Nevada, and by myself again. And the track was a little less than desirable. I mean, it wasn't a terrible racetrack. It just wasn't the kind of track that Gary as a race car driver likes. And here I am running second again, the whole race, and Jerry Morgan's leading, and I was actually keeping up with him, which I had a crate motor in the car I was running, and Jerry had a motor that Brummy had built, so I mean, I was way underpowered, but I was kind of keeping up with him. Well, about 4 laps to go, I jumped the cushion and I ended up finishing 5th. And I don't know, and it was towards the end of the year, and I had some other stuff coming up, so I didn't have as much fun as I thought. And I remember hearing Andy talk about the fun aspect of it whenever Shannon talked to him. The fun just wasn't there. So I ended up selling everything at the end of the year that year, and I've been kind of on a little hiatus since then. That was about 2018. So
that brings us to 23, to this year.
Yeah.
So you start.
So from 2018 till now, for about 3 years there, I would go to the races about twice a year, just enough to keep my interest peaked, but not to where it would like get its hooks in me and drag me back in type of deal. So then 2021, I get this phone call
from this crazy guy.
Well, actually, I got a phone call from somebody else first. Said, hey, somebody just bought Butler Speedway and they're looking for a promoter. I said, okay. And, well, why don't you call and talk to him about it?
And of course, I'm figuring you've never thought about something like this to this point, ever.
No, because everybody I've ever talked to that's been involved in a racetrack says it's the dumbest thing they've ever done. Because I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it. I mean, as far as you gotta check your emotions and your friendships at the gate, because none of that stuff exists inside that place.
These guys have got to be addicted to it, if you ask me, to keep doing it.
Yeah, it's almost like a little bit of a sadistic thing, I think, for some of them. Because I'm not. I mean, I've questioned whether I really truly was doing what I was supposed to be doing or not a few times, or actually a lot of times. Because it's not easy. It's hard. I mean, Jerry Hoffman told me, he said, you're gonna lose friends that you thought were, or lose people you thought were good friends, and he said you're gonna be a no good somebody to a lot of people, and he said that's just part of it. And Scotty Allen said, I think his actual question was, have you lost your mind? And I said maybe. But at the same time, after I talked to Mike the first time, I felt like two things. Number one, it would give me a little bit of an end to stay involved in racing more, be back involved in racing more. And then number two, being a racer on this side of the coin, knowing what racers need and want, if I could help guide and direct that to some extent, that's kind of what I wanted to do. Have I done a great job with that? I guess it depends on who you ask. Some people will tell you I've done a good job. Some people will tell you I've been terrible at it. But, that's just the nature of the beast.
I feel like, if I'm just going to say,
you don't have to suck up, Kenny.
I feel like you've done a good job with the multiple drivers that, not the veterans. I mean, the young guys like myself. I've come to Gary steaming, and Gary been able to, as a driver, not as the promoter, say, look, this, and figure it out. So yeah. I personally think, and I thank you, that you've done a great job with multiple drivers that you've had at your facility.
I appreciate that. And I mean, it does mean a lot to hear things like that, because it honestly is about a thankless job, because like I said, I mean, you can, today, everybody involved can be just as happy and stuff as whatever, and then tomorrow you're going to have half the people that are there mad at you, and
just like that.
Yeah. And, and like I said, it's not easy. It's not for the weak at heart. Is it worth it? I mean, I feel like it is.
So you're enjoying it
most of the time.
I mean, I know
it's hard. I mean, I do enjoy it. I tell you, probably the most fun in the last 2 years that I've had was when I was in the flag stand. And I don't know why. It was just something different, I guess. It's one of those things when I was a kid, when you're racing your Hot Wheels and you have your own toy flags.
Oh, yeah.
I used to think about being a flagman. And I've watched all these guys that were really, I mean, I have seen some cool flagmen over the years at the different tracks I've been and stuff, and going to different places. And I've seen some guys that were just awesome. And
that's what I always wanted to do.
Yeah.
When I had a short stint. I worked at Adrian Speedway, and that's what I always wanted. Bob Brown was the flagman.
Yep.
And I always wanted to, and I think I talked to him a couple times back then about teaching me.
But I also know that is probably the second worst job at the racetrack.
Yeah.
Because if you're making calls from the flag stand and people don't like it, they're liable to try to climb the ladder. The only nice thing about it, if they climb the ladder, you kick them in the head and knock them back down the ladder. But,
you got an advantage.
Yeah. If I'm higher than you are and you're coming at me, I got a little bit of an advantage. But you always got. Then another thing, I mean, I've watched this at other racetracks before. I've seen people throwing rocks at the flagman before, and that's not cool. But anyway. But no, I have overall. It's been awesome to do it. This is another one of those things that I've ever dreamed in 100 years I'd do something like that. No, that was not even. That was less on my radar than driving a school bus was.
Right.
The school bus thing was kind of a natural progression because, like I said, my dad and my grandpa both did it, but promoting a racetrack was not. And it's been a learning curve for me as well. I mean, It has and it hasn't for Mike because he had done the go-kart stuff. The biggest thing that Mike has had to learn is how to deal with the big cars and the drivers with the big cars. The go-kart world is a little different than what the stock car world is. And that's why he wanted somebody that knew stock car stuff to come in and do it. So it's been an adventure.
What's your favorite? So we got your favorite night racing. What's your favorite night promoting?
Being in the flag stand. Honestly, I mean I want to tell you another cool night, and was the night you got your first win and jumped in the pond in the infield. That was cool. I knew you'd said when my first race I'm jumping in that pond, and I thought, man, Kenny's got to win a race because I want to see him jump in the pond.
And there I went. I had to hide the tears somehow. That was a big deal.
I even took a nasty, gross, wet hug from him.
You did get a big old nasty hug.
I did. To see that and to see the progression in some of the young drivers, watching them get better over the last couple of years, guys that hadn't raced, guys that, like you, that had just started racing basically, and just watching guys get better each week and each year. You know, I mean, I think this year the most improved driver I think went to Dakota Lowe, and Dakota, you know, watching him get, and not that Dakota was bad, but I mean Dakota had a lot more good nights this year than he did the year before, and some of those are just victim circumstance things and
some
stuff.
tough competition.
Oh
in
yeah, that B mod
class up
class
there.
is crazy. And I mean the B mods and Midwest mods both are tough. You know, the rookie of the year this year, Bone. What's his first name? I can't
Braden.
Braden, yeah, Braden Bone. You know, watching him progress this year.
He was one that was really fun to watch progress.
Yeah. Last year, Dakota had just started racing and got Rookie of the Year last year.
Dakota Dillon.
Dakota Dillon, yeah. And then, you know, I know some of the guys that were on the, or another guy that was on the vote for the most improved was Timmy Carter, and Timmy's come a long ways in the last 2 years. I mean, it's cool to see those things happen.
And
you know?
be a part of that.
Yeah.
Be, you know, holding the, not, you know, I mean, the promoter don't make this kind of stuff, but for a guy to be proud of what his drivers are doing, that he's bringing, that he's trying to get to come put a show on every week.
Other than the fact that I'm there and I listen to them complain and gripe and try to make everybody happy and try to get them the best bang for their buck that I can. I mean, that's what my job is, and you know, that's kind of the reward that I get is seeing stuff like that. You know, because like I say, it's not the most rewarding job in the world.
Yeah, but that tells me that you're the right guy for the job, because that passion, when it comes to racing, the passion drives everything, because we ain't making no money. So
when I started racing, when I was growing up and I started, you know, I talked about all these guys that I had that kind of mentored me and that I looked up to, and
so
you know,
who did you look up to coming into racing? Do you think the most?
So when I was little, when I was a kid, my dad raced. Of course, my dad was my hero. I mean,
right.
That's just a natural deal. But a couple of other guys that I really liked, they were always really super kind to me when I was a little kid, was Ken Essery. Kenneth has always been just golden. I mean, he's one of the nicest guys you're ever going to meet. Also, he's a good racer in the late model Hall of Fame over there in Kentucky and stuff. And, another one that really just was always super, super good to me was Johnny Bone Sr. Johnny ran late models, the Arkansas Express. He first trophy I ever got from a racetrack, Johnny gave it to me at Monette one night after he won a race. And I mean, I had that thing. Well, it was in my mom and dad's basement still. The house that my mom and dad had lived in, and I grew up in when I was in high school. It was still in the basement when the basement flooded. So I mean, I still had that trophy until the basement flooded. But it's things like that I always remembered. And then, you know, as I got older and we started doing the dirt work stuff, like I said, I mean, you know, Andy was always pushing for me, and Rex was always pushing me to be better, and Scott Drake was good to learn from. I mean, him and I couldn't do the same things with a race car. We could explain to each other how or why it worked for us and why it didn't. So we had that mutual respect. But I mean, we always were trying to better each other. And you know, guys like Tony Roper, that like I said when I was a kid, he just was there. You know, and so for me, with the younger guys, with the new guys and stuff, that's a passion that I have to try to help and mentor and, you know, try to be. I have to do a little bit more, I guess, kind of behind the scenes with the position I'm in, but to kind of be that cheerleader for them. You know, hey, you're doing a great job. You're getting there. You're going to get one. I mean, there's a handful of people that I've said that to. You know, you've got some coming. You're right there. You just, you know, you get your program just that much better, and you're gonna have a bunch of wins. And there's a handful of guys I really feel that way about. And so, like I said, that in and of itself is kind of an awesome thing to. That's a cool reward to be in the position that I'm in right now.
So, you've been promoting 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And last year, I don't know if you remember this conversation or not. I know Shanna will remember it.
Oh boy.
So last year, I asked you when you were going to go race again.
Yeah, I do remember that.
And you said, I said, you can get in my car, you can get in my seat.
I probably could now. At that time, I couldn't. I probably could now.
the way you looked at me, and I said it to her, that man ain't done racing. Because I could tell the way you looked at me when I told you you could get in my car. It wasn't just a thought. It was a. I would absolutely throw my leg over the door.
So we had a play day, and I think this might have been the end of 21, right there before we actually got going. And Josh Crump had his stock car there, and of course Ed Griggs is a little smaller than we are. You know, he's probably a normal sized guy. Actually, I think we're normal sized guys. He's just kind of
he's just little, yeah.
Because I mean, if you look at Josh, Josh is a normal sized guy like we are. So.
Yeah, there you go.
Ed, sorry,
Ed.
just kind of a little guy. But,
odd man out.
Yeah, but anyway, so he asked me if I wanted to take that car for some laps. I'm like, I don't have a fire suit or nothing. I said, I do, but he's like, so what? He said, you're not gonna hurt it. He said, you ain't gonna hurt nobody, no worse than me or Ed has. He said, just throw a helmet on and go out there. And I'm like,
just get the feel again.
Oh, I don't know. So anyway, he got me coaxed into it, and I got in the car, and I went to hook the belts up. Well, it had those ratchet lap belts on it.
Yeah.
I couldn't get the lap belt loosened up so I could get the belts hooked up, and it started raining. So called that off. Called it good. So then that was, like I said, 21. And then you gave me that offer last year, and it's always been. I mean, it's definitely been something back in my mind. I mean, I've been saving pennies and counting pennies and looking for stuff and looking for deals and trying to figure out how to do it and what to do. And every time I think that I'm getting close to where I can do it, then I got to buy something for the house. You know how that goes.
Oh yeah.
You know, so about that time something breaks, you got to spend all that money that you just saved on. So, so anyway, I went so far as a little over a year ago, I wanted a specific car, and I found one by accident. Actually, I don't believe it was accident. My son had moved to Baxter Springs. He works down there. He bought himself a house. He works at Bagcraft. We were going down there to see his new house. Well, we were going across West 7th, you know, over through Galena, Kansas and stuff to get over to Baxter. And on the west edge of Galena is where Yeoman Race Engines is. And John has done a lot of work for me over the years and stuff, and phenomenal engine builder and stuff. So anyway, right across the road from his shop, the car that I'm wanting, or one type of that body style, sitting over there in this yard, and I'm like, huh. So I stopped, I got out of the truck, and I took a picture of it. And I sent the picture and a message to Greg Petrosky that works down there, and I said, hey, I need you to find out for me something about this car. I said, it's right there across the street from you guys. I want to know if it's for sale. Well, he did some investigating for me and found out that I could buy it. So I ended up buying this thing, and I had full intentions when I bought it. I was going to start building a USRA stock car, because that was the big boom, you know, starting to grow class around here. That's why I was going to drive for, you know, that's why I was getting in for Josh up there, and back in the day when we used to go to Boone for the Super Nationals, the stock cars, I mean, IMCA and USRA parallel each other in some ways. They've got all the same classes. IMCA is your, I don't want to say this the wrong way, IMCA rules are reined in a little more than USRA rules are. That's the nicest way I can say it. I'm not saying that they're perfect. Either side is perfect, because they're not. I mean, there's a lot of things I think that have been done better on both sides. So anyway, the stock car class, here we go. I've always been a modified guy, but one of the best races every year at the Super Nationals is the stock cars.
Man, they put on a show.
I'm telling you, when you get 33 of them guys out there on that track at Boone, side by side, when you think of 30 stock cars starting together, 3 wide,
You think
10
shit
rows
show.
deep, you think it's going to be a disaster in turn one. And they'll run a good amount of laps before they ever have a caution.
Right. 3 wide,
I was
4
talking-
wide
yeah,
still.
I was talking to Justin Pike, and he said that the hobby stock feature this year, he said they ran most of the race before they ever had caution. And they do the same thing with the hobbies. They start them things 3 wide, 11 deep. And so anyway, I loved watching those cars. And I used to think about, at that time, back in the day, well, to build a stock car, I'll just take it to Boone and run both classes. Well, I could never get my dad convinced that. I was like, we don't need to build that kind of crap. We don't, we just need to concentrate on this. And, okay. Well, we had some guys actually at one point in time before my dad got sick and stuff that we were kind of helping out and doing some sponsor stuff with. Had a radio program called In the Pits, and they were wanting to build a stock car, and they were actually going to have me drive that stock car part of the time. And they had found the same kind of car. Now, the car that I wanted, growing up, all the old street stocks and stuff, I mean, I remember Corky Felker building some wild cars, and Jody Tillman used to build some awesome cars, and I remember these cars that these guys used to build a lot of, and they were about a 78 to 80 Olds Cutlass Salon fastback car, the slope back car.
Yep.
Man, I don't care who you talk to. There's a lot of guys that say they're ugly, but I'm telling you, those things make some of the most beautiful race cars.
They're ugly as sin going down the road, but they're
Yeah.
cool looking race cars.
There was one over there in the stock car class at the USRA Nationals this year. Beautiful race car, just absolutely beautiful. So anyway, this car that I found down there was a Buick Century, 78. So it was the same body style. It was a V6 car. Didn't know that at the time. Whenever I saw it, popped the hood on. It was V6. So this thing hadn't been hot rodded.
Right.
Frame's still going to be good and
Right.
stuff. And
Ain't been torqued over.
oh yeah, no, it's going to be a nice cherry frame to build on. And anyway, so fast forward, and the stock car class is not developed like I thought it was going to. At least here, Lucas still has a pretty decent count of them. But then I know they had some struggles this year because mostly, there was some stuff going on in the class amongst the guys, and it kind of ended up dividing the class a little bit, I think. But so the car's has been sitting, and I've been contemplating what I'm going to do with it. I've been trying to get somebody to build a car out of it. My buddy Chris that rents the building from me. One time he said that I should build a pure stock out of it, and I said, really? And he said, no, you can't build a pure stock. He said, I'm not racing against you. He said, that's not fair. And I actually told him, I said, dude, if I built a pure stock, there would be people screaming like crazy. So anyway, the car's still sitting out back. I've thought about selling it. I actually had a guy offer me some money for it, but I've seen too many of them sell for better money than I got offered for it, so I'm just kind of, I'm either not going to sell it or I'm going to sell it for what I want for it,
Or build a race car out of it.
Or build a race car out of it. Because that conversation happened again this weekend, and I said, I've already been told I can't. But, so anyway, so I had taken this step, and I just, I hadn't had time and stuff, and I'd had money, more than once to just buy the tubing and start building it, and I just, I ended up using it for something else. Like I said, we had to buy something for the house, or spend it for vacation or whatever.
Right.
Just so we this year, I just rented this building to Chris this year, and counting me, there's 4 guys that race out of this old building. This deal right here, this was not here yesterday when I walked through the building. Him and one of the other boys came in here and put that up today, so we'd have a backdrop for our deal here. But I found that roof. They had a birthday party. So this building has become a race shop / t-shirt shop / party venue, I guess. There's been Halloween parties and birthday parties and stuff in here. But I was up here for Chris's wife Tabitha's birthday the other night, and Justin Pike said, "What's those roofs up there on top of the bathroom?" Because the bathroom back here in the back is it's low. They just built a box around the toilet and stuff. So we got a ladder and crawled up there because I didn't for sure know what was up there. And one of the one roof we found was one off of Terry Kirk's old modified. There was the old roof off of my dad's cars back there still, and then this one was up there. And I said, "Man, that thing still looks pretty good."
That's reusable.
Only on a modified. It's not legal on the super stock. I found that out. during the rules meeting last week. But, so anyway, Chris had been talking to me about getting in a car. He said, "Man, you need to get back racing again. You know, we just have too much fun out of here racing together and stuff." And we've got a friend over in Nevada, James Barker, JJ. JJ's got a factory or a pure stock, not a factory stock. You can't mix those classes up because people get offended. He's got a pure stock. He's got a USA stock car that I actually got to drive at the USRA Nationals this year, which was an experience. It was a lot of fun. We were underpowered, and then that was we took a knife to a gunfight. We didn't realize that the heads on the motor we had, it was a 360. We didn't realize it wasn't the correct heads to run a 4-barrel, so we still had to run as an open motor with a 2-barrel carburetor on a 360, and that is not the scenario you want to do. And then he had bought, over the winter, he bought this super stock from a guy, and I'd actually seen the car on Facebook for sale. It was a buyout deal. The guy was getting out of racing. It was turnkey, complete car, had tires and wheels and spares and stuff with it. And I mean, when you buy stuff like that, you know, a lot of the times the spares and stuff you buy are generally auction items. Are not necessarily, some of the stuff is good, some of the stuff is you just don't really need it type of deal. And so the car wasn't together when they bought it. Well, they brought it over here, and Chris was talking to me, and he's like, I'm gonna talk to JJ and see if I can get you in that car for the Screaming Lehman, because Chris helps put that race on there in Nevada every year. Screaming Carl Lehman was, you know, he was kind of a local legend. Won a bunch of.
They have so much fun with that race. It makes me want to find a street stock to race for it.
You know, it's so awesome how things worked out for me with that deal, because. So anyway, Chris had been telling me this. Well, I saw JJ at Walmart one day. It was actually Friday night. I was fixing to come to the racetrack, and Stop was talking about stuff, just talking about life in general, and started talking about racing a little bit. And I said, "Yeah, so I'd like to race again a little bit." I said, "I just right now's not time for me." I said, "I just can't do it right now." And he said, "Well," he said, "I got 3 cars." He said, "I'll let you drive one of my cars sometimes." And I said, "Really?" Which, I mean, Chris had already told me he was going to do this, and I just, it's one of those deals I in one ear out the other type of deal.
Right, oh, that'd be cool, but yeah, I mean, in reality, it's somebody's race car, something they've poured some time and money in.
So anyway, he said, yeah, he said, yeah, he said, I'd like to do that. He said, that'd be a lot of fun. I said, well, he said, you know, the Screaming Lehman's coming up. He said, maybe you can run that car, that super stock I got in that race. I said, well, that's cool. I said, that'd be all right. I said, but if we're going to do that, I said, I'd like to run it a little bit before that, you know, at least a race or two to kind of get used to the car. He said, well, yeah. So anyway, the car was sitting out here, and so Chris works on his car out of here. Justin Pike works on his car out of here. Cody Souza works on his car out of here. And I start working on that car out of here. And it's, you remember when I told you earlier about not doing it you're doing it by yourself and how much it's not fun?
Uh-huh.
So the 4 of us work on each other's cars, help each other out. And I mean, I came up for that birthday party the other night, and Justin was in there, and he was talking about his car because he was going to the Turkey Bowl this past weekend. And he said, I need something more. I need more drive. So we got to looking at how everything was on the car and how it was scaled and stuff. And so we just took off working on the car for a couple hours, and you know, I had him start moving stuff around on it, moving lead around on the car and everything, and got the numbers a lot better on the scales. And he told me it was better, but he said there's still something wrong. So I don't know if he's got something bound up or what. But,
it was fast this weekend.
Yeah, he said once he can get it wound up, it's faster. And he says fast, but it's just the initial takeoff. He can't get going, and so I don't know. We got all winter now, so we'll get Tori.
Got time.
Yeah. So anyway. First race I got to run with that car, I worked on it for a couple weeks, and I was going to be gone, so I didn't get to run it when I really wanted to, but I ended up running that Josh Haynes Memorial in Nevada. And I think it started 14th and finished 7th, so it was respectable. First time in the car.
Had a good run.
The problem is, the driver had a little bit of a mental malfunction, because we had talked about things that we needed to do in the shop before we went to the track, and the driver forgot part of them when we got to the track. because we just had kind of a miscellaneous selection of wheels that we had tires on, the 10-inch stuff, and we had a 4-off wheel, and with a 10-inch tire and a 4-off wheel on a metric car, that doesn't work well. And the conversation had been had that I needed to put a spacer on there when I put that tire on for the feature. I did everything but put the spacer on. About 2 laps in, I sheared the right rear tire off the car, spun out in front of the field, got the toe knocked out about 4 to 8 inches. It was bad. Those metric spindles are soft. I mean, they always have been, and we didn't have spindle savers on it, so it jumped the spindle, and so it was like herding goats around there or something. But so I wasn't disappointed. I mean, we still actually passed some cars with the way the car was. So I knew we had something to work with. So then figured out that we had some brake stuff going on, so we changed some brake calipers, and so I want to take it up. Well, I said, so this isn't going to be a good test, but I said, at least give me some lap time in it. And I said, well, I want to take it up and run it at Butler on Labor Day. Oh yeah, let's do that. So get up there, and I didn't expect a lot. I'm just going to say this. I didn't expect a lot being back in the car right off the bat. I did not expect what happened that night to happen. I almost feel like, you know how you talked about you take them how you get them?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I did that night. Because we went out there that second night, and went out there and hot lapped, and I'm like, man, this freaking racetrack is perfect for me. If everything goes right, I'm gonna be in contention, and that's in my head
Right.
from the start. And man, that thing was slick top to bottom. It was a driver's track, and that's one of the reasons. I mean, I can get up there just as good as anybody and throw it around on a cushion, but I'm not having any fun.
Everybody's a whiskey throttle driver.
Yeah, I'm not having any fun because we're all doing the same thing.
Get slick,
When
you get to pass
when
it.
it's like this table, and you gotta kind of finesse that car and drive that car. That's the kind of stuff that I grew up on, and that's the kind of racetracks I love. And man, we got out there in a heat race and won the heat race, and there was 2 or 3 really good cars there that night. Now, attrition took out James Niswonger before we ever got to the feature. I say attrition, a wreck happened and wiped him out. Dustin Beasley was there, and so I knew Dustin was going to be fast. I knew those two were two that I was for sure going to have to, I was going to really be having to work with them guys because they've been racing these cars for a while.
They ain't giving it up.
Yeah.
You don't have to work.
And all the rest of these guys have been in these cars all year, and here this is my second night back in a car after 5 years of not driving a car. And man, went out there in the feature and just started rolling, and the car just felt great. And I say attrition got cars because he lost a radiator, which I hated for him because I really wanted to race him, and then other things happened. We'll just say it that way. And we ended up winning the race, and it was not something I expected, but it felt good.